Yeah, I'm Josh, background, mechanical engineering, hated it second I started it. Basically just started spending all my time learning how to code. Also became relatively competent at coding, so immediately after I graduated, I just dove right into tech and spent the next 8-9 years building Web2 consumer tech startups.
Has that changed much over time, or have you kind of continued to be dedicated to the same core principles?
Yeah, I think we continue to be dedicated to it. It's actually pretty fun looking at kind of the stuff we talked about back then and just seeing how core and true it still rings.
I think you guys are unique in that you're kind of agnostic in a lot of ways that other organizations aren't, right?
We're very intentionally agnostic. We want to be agnostic on aligning with any of those and make sure we just work with projects to find the best possible place to go launch there.
So what is consumer and why is consumer?
I think we very much think Bitcoin, the asset, is consumer. We think a lot of Ethereum's consumer. I think like all leverage in our world today comes from owning attention.
Hello, Josh. Welcome to the Decipher podcast. It's awesome to have you on. Let's start off with the basics. Who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, pleasure to be here. Because I did talk about my favorite topic that I talk about all the time. Yeah, I'm Josh. Background, quickly, some mechanical engineering
Cool.
by trade. Hated it second I started it, but didn't know what else I wanted to do, so I just kind of powered through during university. Luckily, I was going through university this was late 2000s, so kind of around the same time that, the kind of startup golden era was kind of unraveling. So
Right.
Throughout my hatred for my undergrad, I was kind of seeing a light at the end of the tunnel on this other side, seeing people launch things from their dorm rooms that millions of people were using, and just kind of got captivated by that idea. So basically just started spending all my time learning how to code while barely passing my undergrad. Luckily I did, and then also became relatively competent at coding. So immediately after I graduated, I just dove right into tech and spent the next 8-9 years building Web2 consumer tech startups. Started a handful of things. I think probably the most notable and relevant period of that was I was at Hopper for 5 years. I don't know if you know it, kind of flight and hotel booking.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
Yeah. So was one of the first employees there, kind of had the, Web2 hyper growth experience. I think we were maybe 5 people or something when I started. And by the time I left 4 or 5 years later, we were, 1,000 people, 10 million monthly active users, led a bunch of big teams, launched business units. So had kind of the whole great experience. And it was both. I mean, I kind of stopped having fun probably after we were 25 people and much more kind of early stage, idea stage kind of hack kind of guy. But you're along for the ride. You don't get those opportunities every day. And I was kind of a core member of the founding team, so had a lot of leverage there as well. So that was great. Also, kind of ruined me, I think, for Web2 afterwards. Once I was ready to leave Hopper and kind of find my next thing, everything else just seemed really kind of boring. That everything I was either thinking about building or people founders starting companies that I was potentially interested in joining were they just all felt the same, right? Like the books were written, I had executed them, I knew exactly, I could squint and look a couple years into the future, know exactly what I was going to be doing and what this was going to look like. And kind of ruined me. Everything I was seeing in Web2 was just variations of the same business models and playbooks that I knew how to go run. And I think also something that attracted me, like the early days of startup building, was it was kind of subcultural, and the people that were there were really excited about the possibility of this new tool set kind of changing the world. And then over the course of the next 8 years, everyone worked in tech. It was kind of this new like career path.
Right.
And the people I didn't really care about hanging out with were also working in startups. So it just kind of, it lost a lot of the magic that it had in the early days. And then, it kind of been a passive consumer and user of crypto for quite a while. Decided just jump right in. And I think, within, probably a month of just spending my time in it, it was just entirely obvious that was, what I wanted the next phase of my life to be focused on. There was something clearly so real there. There was, a subculture forming. There were a lot of people who cared a lot about this tech and what it could unlock, but nothing had been figured out yet. No one had any idea how it was going to be packaged into anything useful. It just really just felt very refreshing
Cool. So yeah, so you were talking about yeah, your kind of transition into crypto and how it was like an exciting new space for you.
Yeah, totally. This was kind of, when was this? Like 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily, always been very consumer motivated. I think, B2B infrastructure tooling stuff always just kind of shuts my brain down, and
Right.
I struggle to care about it if there isn't a path to, millions of other people also caring about it. And it kind of finally felt like those consumer moment was coming. Obviously, it was still early. There's like social token days, kind of pre NFT days. NFTs were just, kind of starting to be a thing. Social DAOs were a thing. So there were consumer like things to focus on, but
Mm-hmm.
obviously aren't where we're at today. But kind of, yeah, dove in, started spending a lot of my time in kind of like social token world. I was had a bunch of friends who had big Web2 communities, and I was like, oh, look, we can go launch tokens, and was kind of helping them do
Right.
that and strategize around them, and really just try to get my hands as dirty as possible to, make sense of the opportunities that were there. And did that for about a year, and then bumped into Jess, who was just doing a much better job at kind of being a center of gravity for kind of the same ideas, that,
Mm-hmm.
clear shared interests, but he was just better center of gravity for it. So met him. He had just actually run the first cohort of Seed Club, which was basically a group chat with people who were tokenizing themselves back in the day. And he pretty quickly just, he kind of stumbled into that, very quickly realized the value that comes from having a group of, passionate founders together in kind of a shared space, all pushing on, similar but adjacent edges, and just
Mm-hmm.
the compounding learnings you get from that, just like the emotional benefits you get from that. And, at the time there were no Web3, no crypto accelerators really. I think maybe
Right.
Alliance was around, but focused on DeFi. Like no one was focusing on kind of the social cultural side of,
Mm-hmm.
of crypto, and helping, early stage founders kind of make sense of the opportunities. And obviously like no investment was going into that space
Right.
at all at the time. So just clearly a huge need for someone to come in and, really support that and be kind of the flag bearer for those types of people. So joined C Club, and, pretty quickly running the accelerator, ran 6 cohorts to date, stood up kind of a media network, raised a fund, kind of have done all the stuff that
Right.
got us to where we are now. So maybe I'll pause there.
Yeah, awesome. I really want to get into all that stuff, and it's fascinating. First of all, though, I'd love to hear. So, one thing I find interesting about crypto is like it's not only kind of an industry, but it's like a platform with tools to build on, and kind of the way that constrains the creative space actually allows people to innovate in kind of new ways. Instead of like sometimes it feels like there's too many options in the Web2 space, but the fact that you have to think of like a token model in a lot of cases, stuff like that makes creates creative constraints that I think lead to a more interesting industry. But I want to talk a little bit about kind of like the early theses of Seed Club. So it seems like you were in it for the tech, but you were kind of in it more for this kind of like subcultural, countercultural, space. And it doesn't, there's a lot of people like, the anarcho-libertarians that get in this space, or like the super techie people who are into blockchains. And it seems like you kind of came at it from a different angle. Is that a fair characterization?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what particularly about that was exciting to you in the early days? Like, what did you see in that space? And it seems like you were maybe one of the first people to pick up on like that early kind of Web3 movement is kind of how I might characterize it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we recognized very, very early on that tokens, they were already starting to be, but were very much going to start being this entirely new way to capture, store, and use social, cultural, and attention value in ways that are just completely unprecedented in the world, right? Pretty quickly, we started, seeing, we had that thesis, started looking around. Yeah, so I think, very, very early on, I think it became, the more we started playing with tokens and seeing what people were kind of building around them, we just got a lot of conviction that that crypto was just going to be a fundamental inflection point for the internet. We were seeing that tokens were unlocking the ability to capture, store, and use, social, cultural, and attention value in entirely new ways. I think we could kind of squint and look in the future and just see how like non-interoperable experiences were going to start to feel very, very janky compared to the interoperable experiences, we were starting to have, and, being able to bring your assets and identity with you across the internet. And then, I think even back then we just started to get this sense that a crypto powered internet could, feel like Tokyo or like Mumbai or New York, and instead of kind of like the Disneyland that the kind of sterile, opinionless, Web 2 world largely felt like. So,
right.
And I think to your point about the constraints, like back then, all you could do was launch a token and then basically spin up a Discord and try to make sense of what this new community you launched was. But I think it was actually a really valuable period of time where, the tokens were the products, and all the like storytelling and meaning making and kind of sense of belonging that you had to build around them is actually, I think, just where the internet's going. And that was also all you could do back then. So I think it was actually a pretty formative, important period for us to just, really hone in on what tokens were capable of. And obviously now you can do much more with them. But
and then has that, like if someone would have asked you what you were doing in 2019 or 2020, has that kind of like core, elevator pitch or one sentence, has that changed much over time, or have you kind of continued to be dedicated to the same core principle?
Yeah, I think we continue to be dedicated to it. It's actually pretty fun looking at kind of the stuff we were writing and talking about back then, and just seeing how core and true it still rings. Like I think building any product, but building consumer products especially, it's like very, very important to have this, core wedge that you can just really, wave the flag up to build kind of novel, differentiated experiences. And usually like tokens are a very, very important part of that, or, the ability to like financialize or speculate on anything is a very important part of that. And, that's going to both be a very important wedge into, all the existing markets and categories that exist on the internet, but also allow us to just create entirely new ones.
Phenomenal. Yeah. Okay. So now we have the stages set for Seed Club, right? You have these theses, and you're very uniquely positioned and opinionated in crypto at that time. So then, what do you do to kind of bring this thing to life? What were the early days of Seed Club like?
Yeah. So I think, so on top of our, so we had this kind of token, social cultural thesis for where the internet was going, and then another very core part to the kind of initial insight of Seed Club, or really the question that we were kind of running at answering was, what happens if you do venture capital from the first principles of a network instead of first principles of a firm? And we kind of had this idea that, if we're able to go and aggregate this big scene and community of internet enthusiasts and, create communities and experiences and media that, facilitates their at-scale participation in this adventure and thing we're building, then we're going to create this really powerful attention base and like rich social context for founders to come and build companies within. And kind of off that thesis, that, if we were able to get that right, we knew we would be able to attract the best, most like kind of socially ambitious, culturally ambitious founders. I think very interestingly, we'd be able to open the floodgates for anyone to come benefit from the value creation of innovation, which we're pretty excited and passionate about. And then ultimately, we think this is going to allow us to take more bets on the really weird, socially ambitious things that our internet needs because of all the adjacent value that we get from working with these types of projects across our network through media, through events, through communities we're spinning up, through the product building. So I guess in practice, to go into, to get specific. So what that actually looks like today is we basically have, a DAO, Seed Club is a token network in the center of this world that is really served by the communities and the media and the product experiences that we build. And then we have kind of these, thin business layers that kind of orbit this core, scene or community or token network. So, and each of these thin business layers are in an economic relationship with that tokenized network. So 50% of carry from all the funds that, invest out of actually goes back to the treasury of this organization. So we can kind of like push a lot of the the things that networks are really good at into the DAO, and keep the things that, more, focused, smaller team kind of, business requirements, and keep those kind of in kind of this business layer, and kind of just, build out this big internet native institution that is, really ushering in this kind of token centric, crypto centric future that, we're very convicted is coming.
Right. So I want to get more into this kind of structure, because you guys are incredibly unique in how you are set up, and then also just kind of like the crypto nativeness of your setup. Mm-hmm. So this token structure, when did that come about? Was that from the very beginning?
It was. Yeah, that was from...
That's very cool.
Basically, day zero of Seed Club was launched as a DAO. We raised money as a DAO. As we've progressed, we've realized the challenges and struggles of investing within the DAO context. So I've kind of pushed that into these more focused funds that kind of higher agency, autonomous focused teams can just run wild within, while letting the network be the network. That's kind of been the thesis from day zero. Mm-hmm. We want the network to be the kind of core value accruing thing. We think this is going to be, has a potential to be a very important internet institution and multi-billion-dollar network. And I think the way we do that is, by having kind of small, focused, high agency teams build businesses that, benefit from the distribution and attention that exists in this network, and then provide value back to it.
And then, so what are the orbiting pieces around that kind of core token model?
Yeah, so right now it's our accelerator. So basically two funds. So our accelerator, as well as Seed Club Ventures, which is a $25 million, actually it's a venture DAO, but $25 million fund, more focused on DAO infrastructure and tooling. We kind of saw the early days of our accelerator were more focused on kind of social tokens and DAOs. That was like the thing you could go do then. And we saw, this really like valuable kind of compatible relationship by, focusing on kind of the social cultural side of things in the accelerator, and also investing in the things that actually unlocks those to exist in the fund. And then increasingly, just continue to have conviction that the majority of value going forward is going to get captured in consumer. So we're veering more and more towards just kind of a pure focus on consumer.
And then I think you guys are unique in that you're kind of agnostic in a lot of ways that other organizations aren't, right? I think, can you speak to this at all? Or like, do you guys do you find yourselves aligning with, some type of chain or community or ecosystem?
No, not at all. Yeah, we're very intentionally agnostic. I think we see a world where one kind of core belief we have is, we're moving to this world where people increasingly want to, see themselves in the things that they use. They want to find a sense of belonging in the places that they hang out. So we see a world where there are lots of kind of culturally focused chains and ecosystems that, are purpose built for a specific type of person, and they're a specific type of project that makes sense to go launch there. And we want to be, agnostic on aligning with any of those, and make sure we just work with projects to find the best possible place to go launch their project that has the right, audience and infrastructure and tooling for what they want to go build.
Right. All right. So now consumer, right? So obviously consumer has been kind of like bubbling in the background for, maybe even years now. But in the last maybe couple of months, it's been like consumer, especially as people are kind of getting scared around the fact that we don't, as an industry, have that many kind of products to offer. So what is consumer, and why is consumer?
Yeah, I think we have a pretty broad perspective as well on what consumer is. I think we, very much think Bitcoin, the asset, is consumer. We think a lot of Ethereum's consumer. I think it's pretty easy to, put a lot of DeFi into consumer. I think a lot of it is kind of the mindset that the founder is taking to actually bring this product to market. Again, we just have a lot of conviction that most of the value going forward is going to get captured at kind of this application community token layer. I think increasingly, we're seeing crypto natives get disillusioned with all the infrastructure investments. I think the music is stopping on kind of this high flow or low float, high FTV game. finally the infrastructure is in a state where you can go build great consumer experiences and bring them to market quickly and cheaply. And, I think within the last 6 months, consumer products have really started demonstrating how much leverage they're going to have as consistent top fee earners across the industry. So, I think if we zoom out, like all leverage in our world today comes from owning attention, and the consumer products are going to have just tons of opportunity to vertically integrate, consume infrastructure and protocols as it makes economic sense to do so, and ultimately just be way bigger than the horizontal infrastructure that's fighting for the long tail and trying to get attention for something that largely people don't care about.
Right.
Yeah.
It's kind of hilarious that like consumer could almost be defined as, stuff people want to use, and it's taken us this long to get to a place where it's like, oh, we're going to build that kind of stuff, instead of something that we can, sell at some $7 billion fully diluted valuation. So
it is great. I mean, I think crypto has always been a consumer technology. I think we just, the only, like the fun tokens of the last couple of cycles were all infrastructure tokens because that's where the, attention and upside was. So that's where people went and played. But I think really, I think what meme coins largely are is just like a complete rejection of that notion and people looking for, simpler, more social, more culturally relevant, games to go play. And I just think that's only going to accelerate looking forward.
Okay, so then, as you mentioned, consumer is like theoretically this infinitely broad umbrella. But I think there are definitely kind of some themes that are standing out, especially, right now. Some that are kind of maybe dormant, some that are kind of really popping off. But let's get into each of those. So kind of what's your view on AI within the crypto space? I know it's a big question.
Yeah. I think one interesting implication of that AI is going to have is I think we're pretty quickly moving into this world where, the cost of content and software creation is approaching zero. And I think in that world, all value is going to flow to community and brand. So I think that's also going to just, compound the value of, building worlds and networks and products that people genuinely want to be a part of. They're forming social connections within, blah, 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 blah. So I think that's, one pretty big implication of AI in crypto. I think outside of that, I think it's to, say AI is probably overrated in the short term, underrated in the long term. I think it's hard to find really tangible examples today of, how AI can be used to build great consumer experiences. I think we're starting to see it in gaming, agents as these core kind of gaming, players in gaming, which I think is really, really exciting. I think what, Titles is doing, for example, where, they're figuring out how to, have a lot of creators to create kind of core models, train them on their work, and have kind of attribution and value share from all the people that want to, use models that remix that content. So I think we're probably the two most interesting AI crypto places right now is in gaming and kind of broad creator economy category. But I think, longer term, I think it's pretty obvious to, say that agents are going to be a core consumer of crypto as well. Like they're obviously going to prefer doing things on chain. You can, have your personal agent capitalize it and tell it to go do stuff for you. So I think that's a longer term vision. I think today the most interesting, AI for AI is really in kind of content creation, remixing of content that people care about, and as well as gaming.
That's kind of a phenomenally interesting thesis around like the agents, because theoretically, there are a limited amount of humans, but an unlimited amount of agents. So the TAM of kind of these artificial intelligence agents that run around doing stuff for who knows who.
Well, they're actually, I think they're already running more rampant than I think people expect. We just call them bots today, but
right.
Huge consumers of meme coins are bots, right? Like MEV is dominated by bots. Like I would love to see a chart of, what percentage of tokens on pump.fun or what percentage of like early buyers of pump.fun tokens are bots, because I'm pretty confident it's a very high percentage of them. But they built a great product that bots love using. So, no fault in that at all.
Yeah, and then also that's interesting to think about like the value extracted from bots by a platform like pump.fun. And maybe it wasn't even intentional, but what can platforms who try to cater to agents specifically or make products accessible to agents are able to do in kind of the crypto space.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, have just been working with another interesting product that, and I think back to kind of my thesis that all leverage lies in having attention, and if you have attention, you can bundle protocols in whatever way makes sense. But we're starting to see some kind of like LLM based like DeFi agents where there's a yield you want or there's exposure to something you want, and you go to a single interface that bundles 100 different DeFi protocols and deploys money wherever it makes sense, and you kind of no longer need to think about or worry about Aave specifically. You just have some product that probably taps into some belief system that you care about that you interact with all of DeFi through.
Cool. Yeah, I think I might know who you were talking about here. Cool. I have another one, and I think you guys were pretty focused around this, but this is kind of what I would put into the dormant category. So that would be NFTs. And NFTs kind of exploded onto the scene. They sucked up tons of attention, tons of capital, and we're kind of seen as this new, like, both social and financial primitive. And now it's a little, they've taken a little step back. NFT volumes are really low. People are still working on NFTs and novel use cases for NFTs, but it's definitely taken a little step back. So how do you see the NFT space right now, and how do you see it developing over the next 5, 10, 25 years?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's an absolute core primitive of, where the world's going. I guess, the funny thing with crypto or just the internet broadly is just how ephemeral, all of our attention is, and how dependent all of these games are on having attention and the right liquidity and the right kind of narratives around them. Like I was playing Pump.Fun before it broke out when it was launched a week ago, and it was a horrible product. Like no one was there, no one was buying anything, no one was launching memes, nothing was breaking out. It was just terrible product. So I feel like largely NFTs are just kind of in because they have attention has gone elsewhere, and meme coins have kind of captured the general liquidity and kind of cult community members that you need in these early communities. The music has just stopped, so it's not a fun game for anyone to go play. But I absolutely think it's going to come back, and I think if you look at Zora, it's still been here in a huge way. It just looks different. Like the big PFP projects and high priced Web ones and NFTs aren't here anymore, but the NFTs being core to the future of this like creator economy we're building is that's still ticking along, and I'm obsessed with what Zora's doing.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting to see, like, and I think some people think of kind of the meme coin revolution as an extension of NFTs, and I think a lot of people who were in NFTs are now in meme coins. But one thing about meme coin, or access to meme coins is I can buy, I can be from an emerging economy and I can buy $1 of meme coin and I can participate, where it's like, how am I going to buy a Bored Ape, if the average GDP in my country is $500 or something? So,
I think really it's like shining a light on the fact that for the most part, NFTs of the last cycle, like, were just financial assets and gambling assets, right? For your average, the ones that did form, strong cult-like communities and, have big adventures that people genuinely want to be a part of, continue doing well, right? Like, Luca and Pudgies are crushing it. Punks, obviously, they're down in price, but continue to have like a very, very strong community, and I'm confident they're going to continue doing well. But I think it was largely just, FTs, meme coins are just a way better speculative game to go play than NFTs. I think largely the more ambitious communities that had NFTs as their core asset realized that it's actually a pretty restrictive asset to use as membership. It's like, there's 10,000 of these. We can let no people in. People own one. There's they're kind of highly liquid secondary market. So I think, meme coins kind of replaced the use cases of NFTs that we had back then. But I think, NFTs as primitives and building, social products on top of them is definitely gonna come back.
So what about meme coins from kind of a consumer lens? What is the future of meme coins? Is it just kind of like the hyper speculation of crypto, or is there something more?
Yeah, I very much think there's something more there. I think they, I have this thesis that there's going to be a meme coin for everything anyone cares about. I think, I have a high degree of confidence that, meme coins around sports teams, for example, are ultimately going to be more valuable than, the sports franchises themselves. I think meme coins are going to make people realize how little of the social and cultural value is actually captured through, selling jerseys and tickets. And if you can actually, launch an asset that is kind of this identity-based asset, gives me access and exposure to this, world I care about and adventure I want to participate in, they're going to be wildly, used and valuable things. I think we're in this, continue to be in this funny period where, they largely are speculative assets. And I think the thing that we need to break out of that is people treating them more as social primitives and, building, I think, more like vertical specific social products around, all of the insane kind of attention generating and value capturing properties they have. So a thing that I've wanted to see exist for a long time, for example, is like a sports focused social product where, teams, fan bases are competing to have like the most valuable tokens, and fan bases are launching, mimetic tokens related to, their team or the things that like emerge, in games. So I think they're going to be absolutely core to a ton of, really powerful consumer social products that launched. I think it's really hard today to go compete with Pump.Fun to be like the chaotic launch pad. And I think, more and more the opportunity are in kind of building great user experiences and social products around them as kind of these social products.
So would you say kind of like the value accrues pre-meme in that the speculative assets sit on top of platforms like Pump.Fun that generate revenue and provide a service, or is it going to be the meme community that launches the product themselves?
Yeah, I think we're just going to see a ton of different variations of them. And I was formulating maybe 6 months ago, I kind of threw scene coins into the like, zeitgeist of crypto Twitter. And really what I recognized there was, you have these pure play meme coins that are really like capturing the mimetic value and attention value of this underlying meme, which is great. Like that's going to be a big category. You see, there's a political debate and there's a million meme coin at launch, and people like participating in that social experience, speculating on like the, the length and of like that, that attention base. But I also started seeing a lot of tokens that largely like called themselves meme coins, but they actually they weren't actually capturing the value of some underlying meme. They were actually just this like identity token that people were launching into these pretty well defined internet scenes that people were finding belonging in and wanting to spend time within and build within. And I think that's increasingly going to be a big category here. And I think if you, again, back to like all the leverage existing with attention and how effective tokens are at building attention, I think there's a pretty clear playbook you can go run where you launch a meme coin into a defined scene. We actually did this with a token called Enjoy on the Zora network. It was the first meme coin on Zora network, and we launched into this scene of on-chain creators and collectors who really believe that that's the future of the creator economy. And then suddenly you have tons of people with skin in the game. You're building this increasingly interesting kind of reputation layer and social graph. You have this huge attention base, and now we can go launch products into that. If we start having products with lots of users, you can go launch a chain on top of that. Then if you've aggregated the attention and liquidity of a bunch of this like specific type of person, then a bunch of other people are going to want access to that, and suddenly you have this ecosystem forming. So I think we're just going to see meme coins as a term get unbundled, and I think there's a ton of opportunity within each of those categories to go build interesting things.
One kind of potential unbundling of that would be kind of what I think of kind of as like the Web 2 integration. So like, the Starbucks NFT or whatever, the DraftKings, Polygon speculation platform, gambling platform. And that's another one that's kind of like stepped to the side. That was one of the big narratives, I think, in kind of 2021. How do you see that space?
I don't see it going well. These aren't internet native organizations. They're these huge corporations that people, largely don't care about. I think they're just going to continue being way less interesting than these internet native things that are really grassroots. They don't have some active corporation at the top trying to, use this to drive shareholder value. It's really this like raw internet, social scene that can now just go and serve themselves. And I have this really strong belief that if you can go build a network that 1,000 people really care about and want to participate in, then that's a foundation for, 10,000, 100,000 people to go speculate on that network. And suddenly you have something very, very valuable with a ton of firepower to go and build stuff that uniquely serves themselves.
Right.
So I don't see Starbucks being able to compete with like the sense of belonging and identity that people get from that.
So bullish, crypto native, bearish, Fortune
Starbucks.
500. Yeah. Interesting. So yeah, that gets into the whole question of like tokens, and I know that you guys have talked a lot about like this anti-high FDV, low float meta, and I think that's partly necessary for your thesis of how you think the world is going to play out, right? Because it's like, no, we need the people to be. The people need to be the base of this versus like the large, massive, crypto venture-backed $billion company. So what do you think about just kind of like the token space? And a sub question in that is like, you as a private investor participate in this space in a very different way than the average consumer. And there's a lot of consumer sentiment against, the VC space right now. So how does that all kind of fit together?
Yeah, definitely. I think there are a lot. I think generally, your average person, your average consumer, like they want to be served, right? Like they don't want to feel like they have to, pick up another job to go build value for some network. So I don't think it's going anywhere that, there's a company either at the core of this thing or at least like very strongly related to these things that just relentlessly working to, create value for the community and audience. So I think that's largely how we think about it. And I think there's a lot of things that you can go do to, actually create real communities where users are serving users, to, launch tokens early, give early believers tons of time to accumulate them, create charts that, and make sure most of the value creation actually happens in, kind of the public market instead of the, through just like successive private funding rounds. So I think we're going to get to a world where, a ton of value is created for early community members. I think the best possible thing you can do for your project is make a bunch of early believers and community members rich. So I think there's obviously this pretty like harmonious space you can get to, and this is largely what we're trying to do at Seed Club, where everyone can just benefit from the kind of network value, community value that gets created, as well as the like business value that gets created adjacent to it. Obviously, I think it's, you can get in these tough situations like, the Uniswap token, for example, where, there is this foundation that has raised a ton of money that is largely trying to drive, value for itself. And there's this token that kind of is just out there. The Uni token largely is just kind of this meme coin. Obviously, there's, a fee switch that it governs. But yeah, I think really we just need updated consumer-focused token models to make all of this work. And largely the token models that people are launching today are still just like relics of the infrastructure days of the past.
Right. One thing that I think is an obstacle to your vision of the future of tokens is kind of like the regulatory space. So as attractive as it would be for, like the Green Bay Packers to launch a token, I think it would be really hard for all their lawyers to get on board and for whoever's kind of providing those services to get on board. Like, how does the space solve that?
Yeah, not a lawyer by any means. I think I just have a lot of confidence in, Coinbase, Uniswap, these kind of big flag bearers for the space that have largely broken out and have the resources to go and push for really good regulation here. I don't have. I guess I just kind of maintain, deep optimism and confidence that this is going to get sorted out, and this being something that clearly the internet, want and makes the
Right.
internet more fun and valuable. And I'm hopeful we're gonna find a way to let these things run as wild as they need to go run.
What about the dichotomy between being a private investor or private market investor and having this view that, tokens need to launch early and the value needs to be created with public token trading and stuff like that? Because it seems like there's a bit of a conflict there.
I mean, I think we have a very, very long-term view. I've been in consumer for long enough to know how long these things take. Like we have, zero intention to, actively trade the tokens of any project that comes through Seed Club. Obviously,
Right.
7 to 10 years down the road, like there are for sure decisions to make, but hopefully at that point it's, such a valuable network that, the little bit of ownership that we have is pretty minor compared to like growing demand that it has from consumers to come use it. So I think a lot of that is just, solved from being very, very long-term focused investors who are genuinely obsessed with projects that, we accept to work with. Like it's a core criteria of ours that, we need to deeply believe. Like Jess and I are very bad at working on things that we don't care about. So the core filter we use when working with projects is like, is this a thing that we're pumped to work on for the next 10 years and really want to see exist and thrive in the world and on this new internet? And I think when that's true and you have a very long-term view, I think there's no conflict of interest there.
Yeah, honestly, this conversation has kind of helped me understand a bit better existentially crypto. And that's obviously a very broad thing to say, but your kind of idea around how like just 1,000 users can create a network that ends up being valuable to 10,000, 100,000, a million users makes me optimistic that the kind of 1,000 users that exist today are capable of pushing the space forward, because it feels like the space definitely has contracted in terms of kind of like users and capital flowing into the space. But I guess that doesn't necessarily mean that it's like less valuable or less worthy working on, or there's less reason to be optimistic. In fact, maybe this is where the new models of kind of what crypto is going to be in the future best emerge, is the ones that figure out how to do it when there's only 1,000 users. So that's kind of cool.
100%. I think, we have emerging good examples. I think, Sanko is a good example. Friend Pet's a good example. There are a lot of like good emerging examples of projects who have kind of launched in this way I'm talking about. And I just have this deep held belief that tokens are cool as fuck, and everyone is going to realize it. We just need more people who are, culturally plugged in, going out and telling the stories of what's happening here in really accessible ways. And we just largely haven't had that. But I think within the last 6 months, I'm starting to see just new waves of founders who are new to crypto and are finally seeing, how useful of a tool set this is to go build things that you never could have built before. And I think those are the people that are going to, make the rest of the world see how just sick this shit is, man.
Well, FriendPet's a cool one because I know Adam, the founder over there, has been like the relentless shipper for like 3 years, or maybe even beyond that. And like I'm so bullish on that because it's like he just tweeted about it the other day where he was like, "I'm just gonna keep shipping until like something drives token demand."
It's great, man. He launched a token early. He is very like explicit that he's not being like overly precious with it. He's like, "This is an extension of my product. I don't know what this thing's going to look like. We're going to iterate with the token as much as we're going to iterate with the product, and come along for the ride or don't.
Right.
And we're going to go somewhere interesting." And I think that's great. Like it's such a fun thing to, follow along with and be a part of. And I think we just need to see a lot more of that.
Absolutely. So you mentioned DeFi agents. You mentioned kind of the reinvention of NFTs. You mentioned a couple other projects. Is there anything else you want to plug for listeners to kind of check out or to be excited about?
Yeah, definitely. I guess maybe first thing. So we do a live show every Friday called Internet Explorers, 1 p.m. Eastern, where we just like run down the interesting consumer crypto topics from the week. So really good place to get updated. I also read a newsletter that people seem to like. Go recommend subscribing to that. But yeah, I think, to select name some projects that I think have just done an incredible job. I think, Zora, obviously, for just defining this new creator economy and experimenting at its edges. I think, you can't look away from pump.fun and just how effectively they've shown that meme coins are content and social primitives, and really just show how much opportunity consumer crypto products are going to have to monetize. I think increasingly Blackbird is starting to be a really useful examples for founders to show how you can actually just use the structural advantages of low to no cost payments to break into the mainstream and provide a ton of like real world value. Obviously, like Polymarket for using global permissionless liquidity to attract enough liquidity to make prediction markets actually useful and fun. Just started working with Kizzy, which I'm really excited by, which is a kind of like DraftKings for social media, but they're really showing the potential for more consumer friendly, vertical specific and social prediction markets. And then we just recommend people go look at the portfolio of projects that have come through Seed Club, because those are really a great example of where we see this world going and where we think the big opportunities are.
Phenomenal. Awesome. Well, we'll wrap up here. Check out the newsletter. Check out Internet Explorers. Anything else, anywhere else people can find you on the internet?
Yeah, Josh, CRNLS at Twitter. I'm getting better at just dumping my raw thoughts there, and I think it's a lot of what we talked about here. So if this resonated, just go follow me there and jump into DMs. I love talking about this.
Phenomenal. Awesome. Thanks so much, Josh. Really appreciate it. Really refreshing conversation. So I'm hyped.
Let's go.